Today is day 7 of the November 86 retreat. Many different questions have been asked, and we will look at them together. Actually, this question was on my mind to bring up almost since day 1. It was always postponed, but since it comes so often in meetings, we'll talk today about the difference between focusing the mind, concentrating it, and an open awareness that is being talked about here. Most of us have come from a training or tradition of concentrating the mind. Sometimes it was considered preliminary training of the mind, to concentrate it maybe on counting, inhalation and exhalation. To bring the mind, whatever that is, into focus. There are spiritual training methods of focusing the mind on a word, a visualization, an idea, a concept such as love or compassion. On God. In all of these cases, what goes with the practice of concentration is excluding everything else that may come in the mind that is considered a distraction and needs to be controlled, cut off, or whatever way one may describe it. And the practice itself, the concentration practice, lends itself for this cutting off of whatever else may arise in the body or mind. There are great feedbacks, palpable feedbacks in concentration practice. From this concentration of the mind, energy may arise. One may have a feeling of warmth. One may also concentrate the word, the visualization on a certain area of the body, this area here, the lower belly or the tip of the nose, a spot between the eyes. And in that area, one feels heat from the concentration, just as if there was a focusing of the sunlight through a magnifying glass. There would be intense heat where the rays are gathered and then hit a material object and may come to burn. The brain is used to working in mechanical repetition and picks up the practice quite readily, so that after a while that practice is going. The brain repeats, and There may or may not be other things going on, but the practice can go on at the same time. One can think all of us who have counted inhalation, exhalation, notice this phenomenon that one can count and yet be thinking of something entirely different and be involved with a fantasy. And yet the counting goes on. The brain is doing its job. There's something very satisfying, engaging about concentration practice because the mind has something to do, something to hold on to, something to use to fight what is disturbing, unpleasant, or considered a distraction. One may not, before starting this practice, have considered random thoughts a distraction, but now, when it is labeled such, one has a tool to fight it. One has something to do. Since real potent energies can be developed by this practice, it can be used for all kinds of purposes, used to exert power over oneself and over others. There's something very impressive about a person. The presence of a person who has great powers of concentration is very palpable when one is in that person's presence. But concentration is used not just in meditative practices, it is used in all professions, sports. A person starting from the top of a ski hill, trying to get down to the bottom in less than time, you can see the utter concentration. Or somebody on the diving board just with the tiptoes on hanging on to that board before jumping off, there's enormous concentration. I think if one surveys one's own experience or knowledge of concentrative practices, they are used, we use them as means to an end. Entering a spiritual training center or group, one is given the practice in order to start one's first step maybe on the path to enlightenment. To break through barriers of resistance, to break through the whole power of ego. In all of these cases, there is a motive and a goal. The goal of emancipation, freedom, liberation, enlightenment, nirvana, whatever. Or to become the most excellent diver or skier. The goal and the motive of wanting to get that. The me is involved. The me has a new tool to get to something it considers to be worthwhile or better than what it is facing right now. Finds itself in right now. In these practices, I don't believe the practice itself what happens in the mind that works in such a way, I don't think this is called into question. One is not asked to become aware of the process as such, of motive, of using an activity as means to an end, and examining what the end is, as concerns the mind. This is not being questioned as far as I know. I've read dialogues where a student questioned the teacher, realizing for himself that this power of ego was growing in the course of this practice. The feeling of ego, the need to do something and so forth. And the answer was, you don't understand right now, just break through and you will understand that ego and enlightenment are two sides of the same thing. An answer like that. But important thing that it is mentioned here is the teacher not encouraging questioning, but putting questioning into abeyance, because that distracts from concentrating, focusing the mind. Usually, koan practice in Zen training is not called concentration, but if one observes the mind as the koan is voiced, it is clearly a focusing of the mind. Used to empty the mind of everything except the koan, which means the brain is still repeating or questioning the koan, voicing it inaudibly, at the expense of everything else, if that in fact happens. People, if I remember back to working with people with initial koans, the problems of thoughts, fantasies, distractions seemed not any smaller almost than how it is brought up in this work here. People complaining that it just doesn't seem to work. But it is more likely to succeed than, I don't want to go into that. Certainly people who are attending sometimes say, I wish I had some focus as I used to have. This seems so much harder. Because there are thoughts all over the mind. But is it not realized that the thing that is being focused on, repeated, is also thought? It's nothing different. Thought, image, which we're using interchangeably, including the thoughts that are the motive and the thought, which is the goal. So what is the difference between this and attention or awareness? Whereby I want to say right here, please don't interpret what is being done here as trying to push one way over another, to say this is the right way, the other is the wrong way. People say to me, why do you think that your way is the only way? I don't think there's any way. So how can there be an only way? We're just looking at what is going on in the mind. This is not subtle advertising here, or denigrating Anybody wishes to discuss this, well, we don't have many meetings left today, but there'll be 8 retreats next year. Sounds like advertising too. Can't get out of it. This question, which is asked time and time again, what is this attention, this awareness, this seeing, this listening that is being talked about so much? Maybe we can better say what it is not, rather than say what it is. It is not what has just been described. Focusing of the mind. If there is motive in sitting down to attend, motive of trying to use this work to get to a goal, can one look at the motive, question it, become aware of it? Can one look at the goal and see what this is in the mind at this moment, that one brings it up in the mind, the idea of enlightenment or freedom? To see, question, wonder, what is motive? What is goal? Is it real? Or is it an idea? Right now, as I think of enlightenment, what is it but an idea, a thought in the mind that pops up out of memory held from having heard previously or read about enlightenment? So, in awareness, no goal is stipulated, no motive demanded as essential. But one is questioning motive and goal. Nothing is labeled distraction and not worth attending to, not worth seeing or listening to. Whatever comes up in the mind, can it come into awareness? So that it's clear that a thought has just arisen, or a whole train of thought has been going on for the last half hour. Time is not essential. What is time? We've never had a talk on this, but we bring it up here and there to examine what is time. Thinking of what I will do when the retreat is over, when I get home. That is thought producing a sense of time. What I will do, or reflecting, what have I done during the last 6 days? People will say that. What did I do here the last 6 days? That is thought creating time, either in the past or creating the future. Can there be awareness of that as it arises, as the thought of tomorrow arises, how I will sleep late or take a walk, I hope the sun is shining? It's the creation of tomorrow in fantasy, through thought, image. So can that come into awareness? Not when the thought of tomorrow comes up to try to control it, banish it, empty it out. At that point, we ask, who is the emptier? Who is the doer? Who is the judge? Can one see what that is? Whether it also is thought, thinking I must not, I should, I will. So awareness is not focusing, it is not labeling something as right or wrong, distracting or the energy is not focused on any part of the body. Rather, when there is the awareness of breathing, can one find out what breathing is, how it happens throughout the body, not just in a certain area, albeit wondering if this area here feels numb and dead and non-moving, an area where the main breathing muscle is located, the diaphragm, one can wonder what's going on there. Not what should go on there, but questioning it. Feeling the breathing. Maybe there's a slight in and out or up and down there. Not there should be more of it. If that thought comes up, can it be seen? So it's not a localizing, focalizing. Has no aim. You say, wait a minute, that's not clear. There is the aim of becoming aware of what's happening, of understanding oneself. Is that an idealistic, visualized goal, or is what is happening actually going on? We're just not aware of it. So we're asking, can one become aware of it? Not one must become aware of it. Is it possible to listen to the movements of the mind and body as they happen? Not as they should happen, or might happen, or should not happen, but as it actually occurs. That's what we're asking. Not in order to feel better, but just to be clear. You can say, well, wait a minute, this is a goal, then I won't argue. If you want to call it a goal, you can call it a goal. What interests me is this idea of clarity in the mind, and when it's preoccupied with getting it, or is clarity in observing what is actually happening. And if one notices the difference, then something is understood. There is actually a real great joy in understanding, in seeing something happen as it happens. I don't know why that is. Little children feel that joy when they find something, when they notice something. An ant crawling on a blade of grass. Grasshopper. Awareness does not need motive. It does not need goal. Motive and goal may be there, but it is not needed. We're just forever asking, can awareness shed light on the me, shed light on goal? Actually, the fullness of awareness can only happen when the me is quiet, when the motive is absent and there is no goal. Because then the mind, for that instant of time, is undivided. At that instant there is no wanter of something different and no goal of something different, which keeps the mind fragmented. awareness is not without energy. But it does not have the goal of focusing it, collecting it. But when there is awareness to what is actually happening, energy gathers. It does. It's a fact. It doesn't need to be intended or willed. Actually intending it or willing it takes energy that goes into the channel of willing and intending, which runs automatically in human beings. We have been trained to intend and to will since we were very little. And unless attention throws light on this process, that energy is diverted. If one becomes aware of willing and intending and really sees it, then that energy is available just in attending. It becomes the energy of awareness. It gathers. Yet when there is a state of low energy, fatigue, does not mean that there cannot be awareness. Awareness is not tied to any state. Awareness is not conditioned or conditional. There can be, I think all of us realize, there can be awareness of intense fatigue or a state of low energy. But what happens when one becomes aware of that, one quickly condemns the state, compares it to a high energy state that one remembers from the past, and wanting is set into motion, wanting that state of the past or of the future. Or just plain being depressed about the absence of energy. One talks to oneself, verbalizes to oneself about one's state, how poor it is. And that verbalizing to oneself about the state in which one finds oneself has an effect on the whole organism. If one tells oneself that one is in a poor state, the very words, the very idea has a depressing effect. Particularly if added to his comparison with other people who seem to have so much more energy. Who appear to have so much more energy. One makes all kinds of conclusions about other people when one compares, which may not reflect reality, may not be true. May or may not be. Awareness has no focus and no center from which to be aware. And since it is not concerned with labeling distractions or fighting distractions, it has no borderlines within which it operates. The mind can establish borderlines. We've talked about this. Being so concentrated on doing something, well, it's concentration. Well, one can feel one is so aware of eating one's food that I'm aware of this and I must be very aware, and I'm good at being aware, and right now I'm really aware of my tongue and my spoon and the crunching of the carrots or whatever. And the caw, it's just not there. So it's not really awareness, it is concentrating on an activity to the exclusion again of awareness of the whole thing. Everyone around one, and the sky and the sun and the birds and wind. Awareness is not labeling those things. We've talked about this throughout this retreat. The moment I say the sky is blue, the crows are cawing, the wind is cold, then the world begins to be cut up. And me, as the labeler and observer of all of this, feels isolated from it all, cut off. Through label and reaction. I like this, I don't like that. Can there be awareness of this? Non-judgmental, choiceless, non-partisan awareness that this is going on. Labeling, depression over what one has labeled, the low energy state. And also attend to this new feeling now that's emerging, which we call depression, which is much better, much easier and fuller examined if we don't call it depression. If we wonder, what is it? Which I have called depression my life long. I don't even know what it is. Not scientifically, analytically, intellectually, but existentially, actually, right now, as it pervades the body, makes it slump. The thought comes up, how can I get this awareness? That's a thought. And in that thought there's no awareness. There is the habitual program of wanting to get something. Can it come into awareness as such? Not that one is caught up in this program of wanting to get this awareness, but seeing the arising of a program and what it does to the whole musculature, the organs, the mind, laying it bare, shedding light, use whatever words. The labeling of it is not the instant of attention. That happens on its own. It does not come because we will it. What we will is concentration. That can be willed. Focusing the mind on something. But that is always at the exclusion of the whole, including the activity of concentration itself, is not clear, is not perceived. Is that clear? People tell me, particularly with the end of the retreat approaching, the great apprehension that comes up about returning to the job, the office, the family. Will some of this awareness or openness that has been felt here every now and then, will some of that be there? And the fear it will not. Thought, activity, intention, programs, people feel will just rush in again the minute the retreat is over. Take over the mind and close up every opening. How serious or how important is this question to one? What will happen? Does it just have the seriousness of our imaginations and the emotions that go with it, fear or so. Oh, is one really interested? What happens? From moment to moment, during our daily life, when there is not this very expansive place of quiet and stillness and sensitivity and mutual consideration. Not saying that outside of this place people are not sensitive to each other or mutually considerate. But here for 7 days it has sort of been a way of being. So how much does one want to find out whether there can be touch, contact with the stillness of awareness, with the energy of awareness in the hubbub of our daily life, the conflicts, the problems, the difficulties, the pressures. Does one really want to find out? Does one really need to see what happens in our daily relationship with our work, with our family, the people we work with, the things we work with, the news we hear? Do we need to shed light to understand? Or do we, in a way, cherish the safety of sort of a cotton-wooled existence of habit, running more or less smoothly in habits, but they don't run smoothly. We collide there too. The best thing is when one has no choice but to pay attention. If you cross a 10-lane highway in Los Angeles, you can't not pay attention. You have to. When there's an actual immediate danger or crisis, we have no choice but to attend. That's why at moments like this there's tremendous energy mobilized to act, not out of all kinds of ideas, but out of seeing the fire and getting out. Seeing a drowning person and pulling him out. Or at least trying to. So the question which is asked time and time again, which we ask all of us, why don't we see the crisis of each moment of inattention? Crisis in the sense of the danger of acting programmed, which is not appropriate to this situation, which I don't see because the program is acting. And therefore, colliding with people, not hearing each other, not understanding each other, making mistakes because the method does not fit the situation. The habit does not take care of what's actually now. It has to do with what maybe was okay in the past, maybe then neither, but the habit has been formed. There's another danger, that one leaves the retreat so armed with the intention to be attentive and not aware of that state of mind. I must be attentive. I gotta be attentive. I've seen how important it is. I gotta be attentive. Can one feel the muscles flexing at this thought, or how one becomes focused again on a goal, a motive? This is now what is the right way of doing, is what I got to do. Can one see this whole thing unfold in a gentle observation? Gentle meaning not violently opposing it or judging it, but seeing it. It's taken place. And realizing, as one seizes that is not attention, and it does not bring about attention, only brings about frustration if one can't be attentive all the time. Attention has nothing to do with time. Either it's there or it's not there. All the time is a thought. Do you see that? All the time is a thought. I have to be attentive all the time. What is actually happening? That's what I want to know, not what should have happened. Is that getting boring? Hearing it over and over, or can one forget what one heard and listen now? It's the only way in which talking is possible. Forget what one has said and say something now. Or else it would be an insurmountable chore to say the same thing over and over again. In this connection, another question somebody asked. I'm not quite clear. Sometimes you talk about seeing something at a glance, and then it's often talked, particularly in Zen literature, about leaving the mind alone. Leaving the mind alone, that sounds passive, this person said, a state of passivity, whereas seeing something at a glance sounds active, as having to do something. I wonder whether this question is of general interest, but I've started it, so we will look at it. What does it mean to see something at a glance? It means the absence of rumination about it, absence of philosophizing about what is seen, absence of analyzing it. Why it is so, or interpreting it, which is the habitual way of the brain. Seeing something to think about it, or thinking about something, thinking about what one is thinking about. Analyzing, interpreting. I remember once traveling in Colorado. We were on a really back rock trail there. It was a very narrow fare. And we were with my parents-in-law, Kyle was driving, and they were getting quite jittery about this path. He likes paths like that. He always finds them there. Exciting. And they insisted that we maybe stop and he find out first how this path was going to continue, which he did, at a place where one could still turn around, and he walked ahead through that canyon, and I just walked along and passed by one of those huge, I think we have them here too, they're called mulleins, these with the furry, velvety leaves, but this thing was, I've never seen anything so tall and huge. I had to look up to it. And on the leaves and into the flowers and out of the flowers and the wilted blossoms, there was all manner of little crawly things, ants and beetles and wasps and whatever. All. And the mind started philosophizing about this. And make a poem. I can't make poems. But it was, philosophizing about this being a little universe unto itself and blah, blah, blah. And it was a good sensation from that one saw this and was clever about it. And suddenly, at a glance, there was realization what was going on, and that over all this philosophizing about it and feeling so good about how good one was to philosophize about it, this thing wasn't there anymore. It was just used for one's own feelings of satisfaction or whatever, good feelings. And that was seen at a glance. It didn't need any going into it. There was clear. There was, And with that, this thing was there, as it was. And no one there to needed no one. This thing needed no one. So, is this seeing at a glance which did not happen as a active intention? It happened. But how can one characterize it? It's not characterized, it doesn't need to be. But it is not in contrast to leaving the mind alone. Wait a minute. What does it mean to leave the mind alone? Does leaving the mind alone mean just going on with letting all the programs run? Intentionally? They don't run intentionally, they run, whether we intend it or not. Can there be awareness that they're running without condemning them, judging them, trying to interfere with them, or philosophizing about the mind that runs and programs? I think this is what may be meant by leaving the mind alone, not being in opposition to it, resisting it, trying to control it. And then it may also refer to this state where there is a deep openness. which has a stability to it, an open awareness in which, even though some thoughts seem to skim around, it does not disturb that openness, that stability of awareness that's there. Because if it becomes involvement in a thought, upset, anger, fear, then there's no awareness. But these trickles of thoughts that come and go do not disturb this open awareness. But I've wondered about it, because I'm wondering whether the two really can coexist, or whether this is something like not an optical illusion, but a perceptive illusion, that what may quickly alternate thoughts and then attention again and then thoughts again and then attention may in fact feel as though attention and thoughts were running simultaneously. But I don't think we have to go into this. This is for each one to wonder about, and maybe if one wants to bring up in a meeting. Certainly leaving the mind alone does not mean absence of awareness. It means absence of opposition, absence of dualism. Me and my terrible mind, or me and my beautiful mind. That's dualistic. But awareness of how this mind operates and functions without opposing it or enhancing the sense of self through it, just observing with no one there to judge, like, dislike, fight, support. Is that leaving the mind alone? And yet, seeing at a glance how it operates. See the beauty of awareness, openness, clarity, whatever word you want to give to it, is that it is not manipulatable. It's not controllable. It's not preservable. It eludes the me, but it sheds light on it. And when the me is not at the center of the stage trying to manipulate, to control, to get rid of, when it's quiet, then there's possibility for love. Not sentimentality or mutual bargaining. But love or lovingness. Which is there. It's there. No one produced it. And because no one produced it, it doesn't ask for anything in return. Will one make an ideal out of this, or will one wonder about it? What is love? We'll end here for today.